Dennis. No, he just said he was concerned about what I'd done, how I'd got in trouble. Question. Do you remember what he told you about what Wilcox told him? Dennis. He just said George said I was in trouble at the base, and what did I do? Question. Then after having this rude awakening, did you call the nurse? Dennis. Well, yeah, this was in mid-morning. I remember I waited until it must have been 9 o'clock or so, and I called. I knew the workstation that she always worked at. She was a general nurse. They didn't specialize. Just orderlies and everybody was on general duty in those days. I was informed that she wasn't there. She wasn't working. She wasn't working that day. Question. It was one of the other nurses that you talked to? Dennis. Yeah, it was an old girl by the name of Wilson, Captain Wilson. I asked her, I said, what happened? She said, Glenn, I don't know what happened, but she's not on duty. I'll try to get the word to her that you want to talk to her. She was wanting to talk to me, but she was sick. She was in total shock. Question. Did she tell you later that she was sick? Dennis. I knew she was sick. She came out with that towel. She said she and the 2 doctors were sick. Then at the officers' club, she said, I want to know what happened to you, and I'll tell you what happened to me. The only way we ever got to the officers' club, the old regular group said you don't go anywhere, you keep your mouth shut. Inaudible. Said that. The old group, they would have known us. It probably wouldn't have mattered, but these people didn't know us. And of course I had a pass, and I had an associate membership to the officers' club, the funeral home did, so I could go as I pleased. I had free access to the base. Question. Did you meet her at the club? Dennis. She said she'd meet me over there. She was sick. She said, I'll meet you there. Question. When you got there, she was at the club? Dennis. She was walking up when I drove up. She walked over. It wasn't very far from the hospital. Question. She walked from the hospital or... Dennis. From the nurses' quarters. Question. Let me back up to the event with the MPs. They physically hustled you out of the hospital. Dennis. Well, they didn't carry me out. They said, come on, we're taking you back, one on each side. They didn't have their hands on me or forcing me. Question. I've forgotten which one of the accounts has them lifting you right off your feet and all that kind of stuff. Dennis. No, they may have got me by the elbow, but that was that. They were nice guys. They were doing what they were told to do. Question. They got you to the ambulance. Did they follow you back to the funeral home? Dennis. One followed me in a pickup and the other one sat in the seat with me. Question. Oh, I see. He actually rode with you in the ambulance. Dennis. He rode with me and the other one drove a pickup and picked him up. They had a pickup. Question. Did the guy riding with you say anything about what was going on? Dennis. He said he didn't know what was going on. That was the first thing I said. What in the hell's going on, you know? He said, you know more about it than we do. Something similar to that. I don't know the exact words, but he didn't know anything. Question. Now we're back to the officers' club, and you met her there. When you saw her, how did she look? Dennis. Like a nervous wreck. Her hair wasn't combed or nothing. She said she'd been sick all night crying and everything else, and she was still crying. She was hysterical. She put her hands over her face and said, I can't believe it. The most horrible thing she'd ever seen. She was really in bad shape. Question. You called her and wanted to get in touch with her to talk with her about what happened. Dennis. I was curious. Question. Did she seem reluctant at first to talk to you about it? Dennis. No, she said, I've got to talk to you. I want to know what happened to you. She said, I've got to talk to somebody, and that was it. You know, I'd seen her a lot. I knew all those old girls out there, you know. Question. Did she give you any indication or any reason to believe that she had been told to keep her mouth shut about it, or... Dennis. Well, yeah, because I'll tell you what. She had this drawing on the back of a prescription pad. These little bodies. It was on the back. A little small thing on the back of a prescription pad. She said, I'm going to show you something, and you have to give me your sacred oath that you won't tell anybody when you got this, and you won't ever mention my name, because I will get in a lot of trouble. That's what she said. I will get in a lot of trouble. Question. She didn't say specifically what somebody had. Dennis. No, she just said, I will get in a lot of trouble. She said, will you do that? I said, sure. She showed me that, and she had it written on the back like I had it on the back of that. You have my drawing, where I said note and all that. That's what she said. Question. She let you keep that? She gave it to you? Dennis. Yeah. She said you look at it and you throw it away. I never did. I went and took it back and put it in my personal file. Question. Which subsequently got tossed, apparently. Dennis. Well, all the files got tossed. Question. What happened? Dennis. Well, the funeral home, I hired some guys. The manager up there now was there before I left, and Raymond said that he doesn't know, because when he was working up there was another manager, and he said he thought Joe Lucas told Inaudible. Of course, Joe and I went over the funeral business, and he said Joe found my files. He said, I know he went through everything you had. He and I had a partnership in a business, and I put up all the money and it went sour, and so we had problems. Question. You and Stan Friedman actually made an effort to try and find that, didn't you? Dennis. We went down there. The old file was right where I said it was. It was still there. But it was, Stan will tell you, we went down in this old basement and I knew exactly. See, I kept files on every case that I was involved in. Murders, anything that I went to court on, that I was a witness on. I kept all of that. I called those my personal files. If I ever had to go back with the insurance companies or anything, I had it all right there. That's why I had those. Question. You found the filing cabinet, but there was nothing in it? Dennis. No, we went through it. There wasn't a thing in it. Stan and I both. Question. They'd stripped it out, or was there other stuff in there? Dennis. There wasn't anything in there. Question. After all of that excitement, then what? Did it just kind of evaporate? Dennis. It just kind of evaporated. Then of course 2 or 3 days later, I was concerned about her because she was sick. I took her back to the nurses' quarters and let her out. I called back the next day and they said she wasn't on duty. And I called the next day and they said she wasn't on duty. Then I went back out there. For some reason, I don't recall. I went out there and I asked about the lieutenant, and they said she'd been transferred out. They said she was transferred out yesterday. Well, that was the day after I saw her. They got her out the next day. Question. Who told you she'd been transferred out? Dennis. I don't know. Some nurses? Question. It wasn't anybody that you remember? Dennis. No. Question. Did they tell you where she'd been shipped to? Dennis. They didn't know. They said she had been transferred and that's all they knew. Question. But then you heard from her subsequently. Dennis. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I got a card addressed to Ballard Funeral Home. It was from her, and inside it just said, just a short note. She said we will correspond later to see what happened to each other. Something similar to those words. She said the only way you can contact me is through this APO number. And there was an APO number. It was a New York APO number. Question. So she'd gone to Europe or someplace. Dennis. Then right on the bottom she says, I'm in London. That was it. I wrote a note, just a note, that said if you feel like it and you get time, then I would love to know and we'll correspond. Mine came back. That was about 3 or 4 weeks later. Mine came back. Question. That was the one that was marked deceased? Dennis. Yes. It said return to sender, addressee, deceased. Question. Then what did you do? Dennis. Inaudible. Question. You didn't try to follow up or see if there was any possible... Dennis. No. I asked. Inaudible. At the time we called her Slats Wilson, a big tall nurse, 6 feet 2 inches, 6 feet 3 inches, big tall skinny girl. We called her Slats. Everybody called her Slats. She was the one that told me she'd heard that there was a plane crash and she was the nurse that went down on a training mission. She said that's strictly a rumor. I don't know anything about it. That's what I... Question. No one's been able to turn that one up at all. Dennis. I guess maybe I should never even mention this. I know no one believes this damn story. Nobody believes this story. Question. I don't know if that's true. Dennis. Anyway, it was a hell of a story. I told... Inaudible. I said I told the woman. I don't want to give you her name because I told the lady I'd give a sacred oath and I didn't want to get involved. Well, it's been 45 years, almost 40 years, and I haven't heard anything. He said I will do it confidentially and nobody else will have this name. Well, that's where he broke his promise after that. I got all over him about it. I called him and I was madder than hell. He said, well, Bob Shirky was the one that told everybody that he was sitting in the back of us. Bob brought Stan Friedman up there when he interviewed me. He said Bob Shirky was the one that let out her name. To this day, Stan Friedman, Inaudible, still says he did not put her name out. I've been on several shows, not several, but 2 or 3 interviews, and I'm not going to mention her name. If somebody says, is this her name? I'm not going to say it is or it isn't. I told Stan I was madder than hell about it because I did give my word. Question. There's another side to that too, from the standpoint of those who were trying to get some answers. By not having her name around, it makes it easier to cross-check the stories that you get from people. You have, it's a question of honor, and that's very sound. I applaud you for that. There's not too many people around these days that are concerned about that kind of thing. And it's also, from an investigator's point of view, an advantage, too. Dennis. I've never read this stuff. I've never watched the videos. I've never read any books. I haven't even read Stan's books. I haven't even read Kevin Randall's, only what they say about me. Friedman is a lot more accurate, but see... Question. You mean about... Dennis. About me. I've read that. That's the only thing I've read. I'm not a UFO guy. I've got another life besides UFOs. But anyway, Stan Friedman's story is pretty well right. But Randall and them was always said I got curious. I didn't get curious. I went out there on a call, just like I told you. Question. The section of their book that refers to you is really kind of cryptic anyway. Dennis. They said the book was already published. Now they had a copy. Friedman sent them a copy of my tape. They had the... Inaudible. Hell, they had my tape. They just made that up. Somebody did. Question. I was puzzled by it when I read their book. That whole section where they refer to you, and it's all very mysterious, and your name is not referred to in the table of contents, but you're in the list of people that's been interviewed, but you're not one of the key people lists. Dennis. They never did interview me. Question. They never talked... Not personally. They didn't interview me until a long time later, a year or so later. They only had Stan's tape. Question. So when they were actually writing their book... Dennis. The book was already published. Question. When they were doing the writing, they were working from Stan's tape. Dennis. Evidently. Question. Who was actually the first UFO investigator to get in touch with you? Dennis. Stan Friedman. When they had unsolved mysteries here and different ones. There was a lot of people. I'd get different ones. I had different people come and say, we want to talk to you about the UFOs. And I said, I don't have anything to say. I don't want to talk about it. And I never did. I've talked to very few people since. Question. How did Stan come to